with everyone afterwards. So I'll just quickly do an introduction on why we are doing these sessions and where this got started. And then Debbie will do an introduction for Anna. And then we've got some questions that we'll run through with Anna. And there's obviously opportunity for everyone else to ask questions as well. So Debbie and I are believers of purpose. I was standing in Debbie's kitchen this morning and she's got this poster on the wall that says purpose. And I thought, well, that's appropriate for what we're doing. And that's sort of the thing that pulled us together in this space. So Debbie is a strategist with Think Human Being. And I am with Fire Studios, which is a media company in Namibia. That I'm trying to get to be a good company that looks after its employees and suppliers and community and stakeholders, and really have an impactful role in our country and in the world, and to build it that it lasts for long. So Debbie helped to conceptualize when I tried Fire Studios when I started here. So we've been going through the process of trying to get purpose right and grappling through value statements and then getting to all the practical things, which we then soon realized it's much more difficult to practically apply and be good and purpose-driven when it gets to the day-to-day things of way of running things. So really these sessions we've started because I've been watching lots of talks and reading things and realizing that it's more difficult than we thought, and we need help and we need inspiration and need to learn from other people who's gone through the journey. So that really is the background to this. It's our learning journey, and it is a putting together a conversation and also sowing seeds in people's minds about what we believe is a different way that the world needs to operate. And I watched a TED talk this morning again about the mindset shift that needs to happen from economies that just grows and grows and grows and consumerism, and how we just got to the end of the line. It's not sustainable, and what we need to restructure in terms of economies to make them self-sustainable, and it's the same thing that we need to do in businesses. And the lady said in the TED talk, that is the burden of this next generation. We can't use the recipe that has been there. We have to find a new way. So that's what we're here for. And thank you for joining us, Debbie.
Hi, Anna, welcome to Namibia. I'm not going to say any more on what Stefan said, but just to give you guys a little bit of background, I met Anna through a Business of Purpose community, and I started snooping on her beautiful brand, Wildling, and it is obviously visually a stunning brand, but in terms of what they stand for, really incredible. So Anna is the founder and the managing partner of Wildling Shoes. She started it with her husband, Ran, in 2015, when they had their 3 wonderful children and realized that there were no shoes that met the requirement of freedom of movement, sustainable materials, and fair production. And that's how Wildling Shoes was born. And I must say, I just love the opening headline on their website, which is, "We are responsible for every step." And I think in this decade of action, that's what we're here to find out, how you manage that and how we put purpose into action in your business. So Anna, I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to start with the first question, if you don't mind. So it's quite a big question, but practically, and I think for us, we really want to get to the nitty-gritty of how you guys do it. How do you guys, in your business model, combine purpose and profit?
That's a huge question.
It's a huge question. You can do it.
It is the
Anna,
question.
It's the question. I think take baby steps. And what I think you can also do is, because for us, it's really interesting. Like, how are you physically doing it? Are you looking at each line item? Are you managing it there? Are you looking at projects first that you look at and then say, how can we fund this? It's really in terms of which angle are you approaching this?
Okay, I'll try. Maybe I'll start in the beginning. I think we saw a lot of purpose in the product that we were making. I mean, we really wanted to solve a problem. There are a lot of health problems that result or that come from wrong footwear or footwear that wasn't designed in an anatomical way. So we saw a lot of benefit in that product that we're trying to develop and design, and also yeah, we could see the response, the feedback from people that were actually experiencing a different lifestyle, a different feeling, a different way of walking, and less pain. So that was the core, that was where it started. So from the start, we had a why we wanted to do that and kind of a problem that we were tackling. And then when the company started to grow and actually grew far beyond what we ever like tried to achieve even with it, there was this moment in time when I thought, okay, like this is no longer just about the product and the purpose in the product, but it's actually about the purpose in a business or in a company. And we need to solve, or we need to find an answer to the question of why are we actually doing this? I mean, we're doing this to solve a health problem, health issue, but we are also, we're starting to see, you know, financial means that we need to have an answer to what are we going to do with this, because, you know, to whatever, to sell the company and never have to work again, like that really would be a very empty goal. So I think that was the moment, and it was like 2 years after founding the company, 2 years into really running the company. I really took a moment. It was such a busy time. It was like crazy dynamics. We just ran after everything, like kind of trying to keep all these balls in the air. And I really took 2 weeks to consciously think about what are we doing here and why are we doing this and what would be the purpose of this business and of this enterprise. So I came up with that need to fill this with something meaningful, and I came up with the just the understanding that in a company you have a platform to move things. You have so much more that you can use. You have a team, you have smart people, you have all this motivation, you have like financial means that are a lot bigger obviously than if you try to do something in private personally. So I just started seeing Wildling, and not just me, like all of us, like the team, or obviously my co-founder and husband, to start regarding Wildling as a platform to use in order to move those things that were important for us. And it's been quite a transformation. So starting with a product, then starting to define some vision of, you know, where we wanted to go, and this has continued until today, and we've just refined our purpose. Kind of there has been some kind of an evolution in what we think we should do and what we also see that we can do. And I think we're there are huge challenges, especially, you know, that this generation now has to act, and we have to act now, and we have to act all together in order to, you know, face these challenges of climate change, challenges of social injustice. Like there is a lot to transform in society, or, you know, globally, within such a short time. So I really do think that it's not even a question of what are we going to dedicate this to, because it's so obvious, you know, what we need to be doing. So what we're doing, we've actually never looked at the financial trajectory of the company. Like that was always just a side effect of what we were doing. So you know, we have our core competence. It's the product and it's a specific function, and really, you know, the ability to redefine like an everyday product, and that works really well. And we put a lot of emphasis on customer service. So that's another thing, like the customer relationships that we're building up also in direct contact with our customers. That's another, I think, something that we do well. And of course, the brand that we're trying to build up. So kind of those are our key competences. And this is what we have always tried to do really well. And then everything else, like the growth that kind of resulted from that, was really a growth resulting from word of mouth and just people, you know, recommending our brand and product to other people. So growth.
Can I just?
Yeah, sorry. I know I'm giving a long answer, but.
I don't know if everyone read it, but I mean, if you said you redefined your purpose statement now, what is your purpose statement at the moment. So maybe some people saw it, but everyone might not have.
Yeah. So our purpose statement is, and it's not, we haven't published it yet. So it's really it's just gone through the last stages of really, putting it into words and kind of putting it together with the team and kind of taking the team along. So we will have to still publish it, but it says we are part of the regeneration. And regeneration really being, two words, like it's the regeneration. I think that's the way in which we need to act. We need to start acting in regenerative ways, meaning, if you say to act sustainably means you're looking at the ecological, the social, and the economic, aspects of acting sustainably. I think the problem is that we have come so far that sustainability would be trying to preserve the status quo, or to keep something like to not cause more harm. But we've come so far that to not cause more harm wouldn't be enough. We actually need to we need to give back something. We need to start repairing things. We need to give the space to ecosystems and whatever to also regenerate. So I think that's one big thing that we need to be doing. We need to start acting regeneratively on all levels. And also we're part of the generation that now has to act and that now needs to take on that responsibility.
Okay.
So maybe I can give you a more make it a bit clearer what this actually means for us.
Yes.
So like, as I said, like in the beginning, like growth has always been just a side effect of what we do, but we have grown organically also without any investments or anything. And we've been quite profitable from the start. So actually there's a lot of things that we can do and that we can use, those profits for. Of course, to grow the company and to grow the team and to train the team and, to invest into a good company culture, but also to invest in the value chain. So it's called carbon insetting, I think, in some places. So, but that kind of, for me, it's too narrow a way of looking at things. Like we look at the complete value chain of our shoe production. So we look at the raw materials that go into the shoes. We look at the whole, the processes of creating the materials that go into the shoes, the production, the storage and shipping, and also the end of the life cycle. So once the shoes reach our customers, our responsibility doesn't end there. So how can we prolong the life cycle of the product, and also what can we do once the product is finished and there's it's reached the end of the life cycle. So it's a very holistic way of looking at it, and I'm not saying that we've reached anywhere like that we're even close to reaching our goals, but I think it's necessary to look at every step of the life cycle. And for example, to say, okay, we want to be sourcing only materials from regenerative sources, meaning like regenerative agriculture, agroforestry projects, and we're actually starting these projects together with the people that cultivate the raw materials. We also help in financing them. So our goal is that by 2025, all our materials will either come from regenerative projects or from recycling materials. So that's one thing. And then you need to see, okay, what about the production? During the production, there are usually two things that you can tackle. One is the environmental standards of the production. Can you help factories use solar energy, for example, to power their plants? But also, can you look at the social aspects of production? Is, working in a factory still necessary today? And if so, how can you make that work more meaningful and more healthy? And, how can we redefine work in a factory?
Are your people working in factories?
No, actually, our team, we have a logistics team, so we have our own logistics, and that's it's a similar kind of work where you you have to be in a place for a certain amount of hours a day, and you're working and you're doing quite repetitive kinds of action. So but that's also an area where you need to say, okay, how can we actually make this work more meaningful, more healthy, more, I don't know, more satisfying for these people who work there. But also, of course, look at the emissions. How can we reduce emissions? How can we act more responsibly in that way? And then how can we, for example, we're going to offer a complete repair service this year to our customers. So whatever happens with the shoes, you should be able to send them back to us, and we will repair the shoe and send it back to you. And then at the end of the life cycle, because at some point it won't make sense to repair a shoe anymore, and we're also using all these natural materials, so of course, like there is a certain like end of lifespan. Then we will try to recycle part of these shoes. It's not so easy in footwear because you have a lot of different materials and components, but to recycle what can be recycled and to compost whatever cannot be recycled. So that's a long journey because machines are missing, know-how is missing. And as I said, it's a very complex product, but this should be where we want to get to, once, we've tackled all these stages of the value chain production. And I think this is part of where we say, okay, this is how we, we balance profits and purpose, because it's just, that money becomes meaningful only when you make it, you put it to use where you're actually creating value. So yeah, it's a very long answer, but also two very good questions.
Do you have a question, Stefan? Otherwise I'll jump in.
You can go, Debs. I
just want to go, it's so interesting. So if we can just take that back a step and say, okay, cool, you said you guys don't really work on financial objectives. So what would a strategic planning session look like for Wildling Shoes if you look at budgeting for the year? And I know that because purpose-driven businesses have to really look at doing things differently and shifting the old management principles. So in terms of setting financial objectives or setting objectives for the year, and Stefan and I were talking about that this morning. So what does that look like at Wildling?
Yes, we actually, we don't have budgets and we don't have any, financial objectives. So really our strategic
nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we do, we do have a liquidity plan and these things. It's not that this doesn't, of course, it's important to have an eye on it. And of course, it's important also to know, what are the important factors in, a more profitable or less profitable trajectory. But
I'm an accountant by trade, so I get very anxious.
Yeah, but I think we've been in this like luxury position that we never really had to look at the numbers too closely. Kind of, we were, as I said, like as a direct to consumer business, our margins are quite healthy. So, and we're not spending money also on unnecessary things. We don't have offices, for example. We all work remote. And there are other things, that we don't need big cars. We don't need any, luxury business travel or anything. So I think we're quite modest in many ways of spending money. And then on the other hand, it's really great to be able to be generous and large once it comes to things that actually are meaningful. But a strategy meeting would look like, looking at the core parts of our business. How can we make that better? What do we want to reach? We usually do like a forecast over 2 to 3 years. That would be our roadmap. So we know where we want to get. And of course, like there's a vision like beyond that. It's like also a big like mission goal like of 10 years. Because I think it's really, really important also to have those 10 years time, because you can really do a lot in 10 years. And there needs to be a very big goal, and this needs to be refined also every year. Like, are we still, on track to get there? But this has nothing to do with market shares or nothing to do with financial goals or, how big we want to be. And it's
Can you give us an example of those goals? What would an example of those goals be?
Yeah.
So what is the 10-year goal?
Yeah. I mean, our 10-year goal as a company is to help secure 500,000 hectares for rewilding and regenerative agriculture, to invest 50 million euros in circular economy and, you know, our value chain to make it more sustainable and actually regenerative. And also, of course, in the team and future perspectives and more social justice. So there are a few things that we have in mind, but that we're kind of still working on a lot, because I would also like to do this from within our business, you know, to work with small farmers, to work with people in the factories, like to kind of take it like also from within the core business. And we want to reach 100 million people in terms of like a community that we can build up, a community of like-minded people, a community of customers, but also, of course, a community of competitors and people from within the industry, people from other industries, and to really, our goal is to help create a social transformation, and to really try and understand what can be our role in pushing this this kind of transformation. What can be, you know, companies' role, like in general, like how should we act as actors within society, and also specifically what can we do, and how can we also get more people on board? How can we spread the word? How can we motivate people to become part of active change? So those are the 10-year goals.
That's brilliant.
They're pretty far from.
So I know one of the things for me that I've been struggling with, and as a young business and trying to change the model is measurement, because when as a founder or a business owner, you can have the big dreams of what you want to do in 10 years, but translating that to the people that work for you. And if you look at traditional KPI management, where you need to tell someone, okay, this quarter or this month, today you need to do this, or this year you need to do this. I've struggled with the concept that we tend to always fall back into these financial metrics, and you get a behavior which is not long-term orientated in the space where you are in, but people just try and do these day-to-day KPIs. And that comes back to measurement. So how do you measure your success on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, short-term? And long term, obviously you spoke about that a little bit. You can say, okay, but we bought the land, that's a tick. But the short-term success of it, specifically around KPIs, how do you do that?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, it's important to have that 10-year goal also for each area of the company. I think the product should have, you know, a vision of where they want to get, and it would be something. You know, you have that product vision and in terms of innovation, functionality, sustainability, you know, all these aspects that you really want to, you know, set market standards, and then kind of to make it concrete. And I think this you need for every area of the company. Plus, you need to see now the company has these 10-year goals. How can you actually contribute to that? How can product contribute to 500,000 hectares of, you know, regenerative agriculture and rewilding, for example? How can what's role will our communication department play in this, and so on and so forth. So they're kind of, their team commitment is based on the company vision and the company purpose, but also, of course, what they can do specifically in their area, in their field of expertise, in you know, that company area. And then we go down to, like, from that 10-year goal, we do a quite concrete roadmap, and that would be within like 2 to 3 years, because then you can, it's kind of, it becomes very realistic. I mean, you're planning on a different schedule. If that is your goal for in 10 years, what do you need to be doing right now, and what can you be doing right now? What resources will you need for that, and so on and so forth, in order to, you know, to really start walking on that path towards the goal. So that's a roadmap of 2 to 3 years. And also there, let's say, let's just talk about like company level. We would say, okay, what are the core elements of our company? Like, of course, as I said before, it's product, it's customer service, it's brand. and what other elements do we need to also keep this running, which then usually will be, you know, supply chain and finance, of course, and IT, like all this support structure. And we will set usually a set of 5 to 6 goals for basically one for each area that we say, okay, product, that's what we want to get to. And product and supply chain are very, very closely connected. And then you have the communication and, you know, brand, service, like what kind of relationships are we forging, and so on and so forth. So it's a more quality-based measurement, like what is the state that we want to have reached in 2 years. Like we're trying to, you know, to jot down a sentence of, you know, what will this be, or like, let's say for product, like we will have set market standards in, you know, functionality and innovation, and then you kind of break this down. What does this mean for the next 2 to 3 years? And what is also realistic? Like it should be an ambitious goal, but it still has to be somehow reachable. Like when we're not, you know, this is no longer reaching for the stars. This is kind of 2 to 3 years. That's pretty concrete. That's a roadmap. And then we work, like we refine our strategy every year. Like we have a kind of kickoff into the year where we say, okay, is those, you know, that roadmap for the next 2 to 3 years, is that still up to date? Can we, you know, do we need to change something somewhere? And then we have, and that's been tremendously helpful. We work with OKRs, that's objectives and key results. Mm-hmm. I think actually the book is called Measure What Matters, but I'm not sure. I might be confusing it now. And like there's
sounds familiar.
John Durr, he kind of introduced this, or that's not true. Somebody else introduced it to. I think they worked at Google, for example. Yes. They worked with this method. They started, but it started in IBM, I think. But anyway, so the good thing about OKRs is that you have objectives, like those are qualitative goals. Like this is also a sentence, like and it has an added benefit and a value in it. It's not measurable. It's the state that you want to have reached within, you know, that time frame. Usually OKRs are run in quarters. So you have like 4 sets or 4 sprints in 1 year. We're working with a trimester because it kind of gives us a bit more time to work on these goals. And then usually you have a set of 5 goals for the next 3 to 4 months that you want to reach. And the objectives kind of carry a quality and a benefit. And each objective is measured by 4 key results. So those key results are actually measurable. These are like, sometimes you have KPIs in them. Usually it's not a KPI system. Like KPIs can support this, but the key results will be more like, you know, like it's not a milestone, because it's not like in project management kind of in chronological way, but these are like, you know, you say we want to wow our customers with a new product portfolio. Okay, I'm just making this up. But then you would say, okay, in order to reach that, like for this time frame of 3 to 4 months, we want to, you know, add 1 new product to our portfolio. Establish like the collection for next year, whatever. Like you have 4 things that kind of individually you can work on that don't depend one on the other, but that you say, okay, if we have reached those 4 results, then we've actually reached our goal. And then this becomes quite measurable. Also progress becomes measurable. But the focus is on a goal that has an inherent value in it. And I think that's what makes the difference between, you know, working with a system such as OKRs in comparison to working with a like strict KPI system. You know, so this kind of like the whole company works on the system. It gives you great alignment because everybody is kind of paying into these company goals. Everybody has their, you know, they all have their own sets. that are, you give also suggestions bottom up, and then you kind of, you make the company set, and then it goes top down, so that, everybody in the company is kind of working towards the same goals. It gives a lot of alignment and a lot of transparency. So it also has like a lot of added benefits to it.
Cool.
Excellent. I can ask you 1,000 more questions about this, but let's move on to something else.
We actually have a training, like a free training that we offer. I think they're working on the English version, but it's like once a month that we just, it's like a workshop. So I'd love to invite you to that, like whoever is, interested in hearing more about OKRs and how this works for us and what we found like as a framework or setup that really works well. So
that's brilliant, because
that's
it's something that I'm really practically studying at the moment.
It's a complex topic. So
I think what I'm going to do is we can ask 2 more questions, then open up for everybody else to ask a question. Stefan, is there anything you'd like to ask?
No, you can go.
Okay, just quickly, we talk a lot about culture. Okay, if you read Jim Collins, getting the right people on the bus, keeping the culture alive. So how does the Fox? I know that some of your values are freedom, freedom of thinking, freedom of movement. How do you keep that running through your culture in terms of types of people that you get on the bus, in terms of activating that purpose, like on a day-to-day basis in the company?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a purpose and to also clearly know what that means, and to have values that you've clearly that you've defined also together with the team, that will, that will be the guiding rails, like to how do we want to act with each other and also with partners, and what are the guidelines for us. Then each team has a team commitment that is based on, the values and the purpose and their own vision for their area. And it's also really important to say, okay, what are the qualities that we're looking for in people that want to join our team? How can we ensure that there is a, Wildling fit, as we call it? And that's it's based on the values, it's based on the purpose. And it helps us, for example, like look for the right place to place job offers. Like there are some networks that are already, more in the sustainable or social entrepreneurship area. So it's easier to attract the right people to the job offerings that we have. It's important, I think, in the recruiting that you know how to ask for these things and how to make sure that you get the right people on board. We have a quite long trial period. It's 6 months trial period, so that we actually have time to get to know each other, that we have time for a good feedback call after 3 months. And if some things are not right, you have time to adjust and to clear expectations of each other. And but we're also quite strict by now in saying, okay, if there's any doubts in those 6 months, then we'd rather, it's not nice for us, it's not nice for that person, but it's better to make a hard cut than to drag people along that are not happy where they are, or expected something else, or that we feel like it doesn't really fit.
No, I mean, from what I'm experiencing and reading, I think that is one of the things that becomes so much important in a purpose-driven business is people have to buy in, they have to be part of it. Because you do not have this system where you can be breathing down people's necks all the time. You want them to be part of the dream and part of the energy. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So I would just like to ask a question about rituals and habits. I mean, it's one thing is to have these ideas, and you can even have objectives, but when really in a way you need it to be a movement inside the company that everyone buys into. So what are the things that you do as regular rituals and habits to make sure that you keep the energy and that people really understand and buy in? Just a few examples of those. I'm sure there might be lots.
Well, I think the most important thing is intrinsic motivation. And there are 3 things that we believe are important to foster an atmosphere in which intrinsic motivation plays a big role. So one is meaning. That's why for us it's so important to to have goals that are actually meaningful and that have an added value and a benefit that you can clearly see, so that you know when you've reached these goals, you've actually created value with it. That's one thing. The other is autonomy. We have a very trust-based culture. We don't control the hours of work, and it also doesn't matter where you are working from. Like, we're a remote team, so there's a lot of trust. And we just look at the results. So we talk about this every week with each other, like in a one-on-one, in the team meet with their team. You kind of discuss progress, but it's not, the goals are not, you're not being punished if you don't reach your goals, but you also don't get, benefit if you do reach it. Like, there should be intrinsic motivation to reach it. But we also don't care how many hours you've needed to do that. Like, we do care if you're working too much. Like, that's something that should be discussed, so people don't run into burnout or multitask all the time or something. So we do help with structure and deep work and like a calm workplace, but we don't track the hours, and we just look at the results together. So it's very trust-based, and that on the other hand gives people a lot of autonomy and flexibility and freedom. And then there's developing people according with their strengths, and strengths not necessarily meaning that this is the thing that you do best, but that's the thing that you like to do best. It's something that gives you back a lot of energy when you do it, and you're really happy to do it, and you feel like you're learning and you're developing. And I think if you have those three things, meaning and trust, like autonomy, and the feeling that you're learning, then with that comes intrinsic motivation, a lot of intrinsic motivation. Cool. So I think that's all you need in a team, actually, to keep it running and to keep people like really happy to contribute and to become part of the things that are being achieved.
And I see you were planting a veggie garden the other day, which is obviously also growing your own vegetables.
Yeah, that's our way of trying to make, logistics of trying to loosen that up, that repetitive kind of work. So we have a garden. It's an idea that comes from the team. I think that's also really important to create space for such ideas. They wanted a garden, so they started planning it, and now they have a beautiful. I mean, it's still cold here, so I hope it will be a beautiful garden soon.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to do one last question, Stefan, and then we can open for questions. Otherwise, we're going to run into time problems. Okay, so you can answer this in either way, Anna. Is there something you are currently doing or have done that you would highly recommend to a young purpose-driven business? Or is there something that you would never do again and you would like to let a young purpose-driven business know so that they don't have to make the same mistake?
One thing that I'm very happy that this never happened was that we had talks with investors kind of 1.5 years into running the business, and it just didn't work out. Like, from both sides, we kind of we felt that it didn't work out, and I'm so incredibly happy that this never happened. It would have really. I know now, although those were people that we were in touch with and we liked each other, and those weren't bad people, but I still know that if they had become part of the team and if they had something to say in the development of Wildling and the organization, this would have stood in our way so much, and it would have taken all the motivation and fun out of it for me. So I'm incredibly happy that we're independent and that we can take our own decisions today. So that's definitely something. Fantastic. I know that sometimes you need someone to help you with finance, to support you, and it's completely fine, but to really look for the right person that will share the purpose with you. Otherwise, it will choke you, I think, at some point, especially, if you have that motivation and drive, that's a dangerous thing to get on board.
Fantastic. I think that's excellent advice. Okay, thank you so much, Anna. I think I'm going to open it up now for anybody that has questions. You can just unmute yourself or put your video on. It's such a nice opportunity. I see Pierre has his hand up. I'm going to unmute him.
Pierre just has to switch his mic off.
There you go.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Anna. Really interesting story. I'll try and be quick. For me, always when I hear this, I'm just thinking about closer to home, and I understand that obviously we are in a very different social environment than what you have, where you run your business. But I was just thinking, you know, you started off with describing the business and how you are trying to morph it into something, you know, that regenerates and keep on giving back, which is a message which quite, yeah, it's something that I also think is very important. But then when I think about the aspects that you describe, such as social justice and social transformation, I think that's something in our city that we need to get right for the future, even in the country. I would go as far as that. So I'm just wondering, you know, for us, we've got a very different kind of social injustice, which is also called sort of a spatial injustice, whereby people were segregated for a large period of time. And you try and integrate those people into the economy, into starting a business. But at the same time, you want to have a business which is, as you said, is environmentally sustainable, and that comes at a cost. So I was just wondering, maybe you don't have an answer to this, but do you have some insight into how you can balance that? You know, it feels to me that there has to be some kind of a balance into keeping these environmentally sustainable elements, but still running it as a business, which makes a profit, because that, you know, if you don't do that or can't achieve that, you kind of defeat the purpose. So maybe the question is for anyone who can give some insight into that. It's just something that I thought of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a, I mean, obviously, there is no, you can't even get close to fulfilling your purpose if you are, you know, if your business isn't working. So of course there has to be a business model behind it that actually makes economic sense. I think there's also some things can be changed or must be changed in our systems, in the way that we calculate, for example, the value of a business, in a way that we calculate the externalities of a business, and in, you know, the way that we calculate maybe a positive impact of a business, like especially in the social entrepreneurship area. These are very important questions to ask, and there could be, for example, tax benefits for a company that really contributes to a social problem, contributes to solving some social injustice, for example. And I think these companies should be valued and taxed differently, for example. So I think there are some things that have to change, like on the outside, but obviously also from the inside, it has to work. The numbers have to add up in some way. I do think that, for example, customers are changing very much. Like, I mean, maybe we should call them citizens instead of customers. They are changing their behaviors, and I think it's very important for example, if you're a brand, to show what you stand for and to kind of tell these stories of what's behind it and to forge relationships with these citizens. And I think that this can also very much have an impact on the success of your business. And I think it will increasingly have an impact on the success of our businesses. And so maybe it will be a bit easier for companies with a purpose to, you know, to grow within a changing system and society.
Cool. Thank you.
I think financial sustainability, that's an underlying thing. I mean, it doesn't help if you don't have a business model that can generate income, that can sustain itself financially. It doesn't help we talk about everything else. And then that was also one of the confusing things for me in the beginning is, so you're not supposed to be money orientated, but you are very money orientated because you have to survive. And it is thing. And I think you referred to those basics that you have to have in place. There's underlying things in a business that always needs to be there. Yeah. And when we talk about purpose, when it is a little bit of a level up, and in terms of the way you think in the long term and the impact that you want to have in the long run. But it is after accepting that we're going to have enough money to survive.
Yeah, and maybe if you look at the triple bottom line method, right? Like you have profit, of course you're responsible for profit, like you're responsible for, you know, the health of your company. So that's one responsibility, but you're equally responsible for people and for planet. So and I mean, it's always funny that we see these things as two separate things because they really are not. But maybe sometimes makes it easier to, you know, to have the stakeholders in mind. But yeah, I think, you know, of course we have a responsibility to be financially intact. Yeah.
I think it is a challenge. Like Pierre was saying, it's a challenge here because of the systems that exist and that we're operating in, to really shift, to get everybody on board and to shift the thinking about saying, okay, well, how are we going to do this differently? And I think, I mean, I must just point out for everyone in the group that I love the fact that if you look at Wildling's purpose and your big goals are totally separate to what you do as a business. It's got nothing to do with, the products that you actually produce in terms of the regeneration and in terms of your big goals and objectives. Are there any other questions? Anyone else in the group?
Maybe just to respond to that, Debbie, and until, we got a question here.
Yeah.
I think, yes, on the one hand, these goals are absolutely not connected to the core of our business. And on the other hand, they all are driven from within that core. And I think it's also important. I mean, for me, it feels important to have some connection between the two.
Yeah, finding the space that connects.
Yes, exactly. And also growing in depth and in, width instead of, just one direction. So if we invest in our value chain, in the end, of course, we're making Wildling also more resilient. And, if we invest in our team, we're, investing in skills and we're investing in loyalty of the team. And all of these investments make sense in themselves, like they have a value in and of themselves, but they also contribute, of course, to Wildling's well-being. So I think that's an important connection to have. So it's not entirely separate. We do donate to an organization that rewilds areas in Europe. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit far from what we actually do, although we're connected, in that mindset of rewilding and of nature, knows what it's doing. You just need to let it be. Yeah. But that's kind of something that we do entirely, separately and out of the context of our business. And yet the regenerative projects are they start emerging from within these areas or around these areas. So we do, I think it always makes sense once you have that connection still, once you've established something there.
Perfect. Stunning. Stefan?
Yeah, I think with that point, I think the longevity of the way that we look at things, and really, I mean, if I say I come from financial training, we've been trained to work on short-term financial goals. And as you're saying, I mean, if we do these things right, if we have a business that is an active contributing member of the community that it is in, which is an active contributing community of the country, I mean, everything gets better. And in the end, you build a stronger business. So the objective is still, how do we build a really good, strong business? It's just that how you measure it, how you look at it in the time frame is a little bit different.
Absolutely.
So, and it's really starting with a small building block. So that makes a lot of sense. Oh, I see Amelie has a question.
Amelie?
Yes, hi. I'm just going to turn my video on because it's weird for me not to. Thank you, Anna and Debbie and Stefan, for this lovely, insightful conversation. I have a question, maybe a bit different. Have you, when you recruit your team, because obviously, as Debbie was saying, you want to attract the right people on the bus, and so I was just out of curiosity wondering if you've noticed any trend of where the people on your team come from in terms of education. And I'm not talking, what type of career they've studied, or, not maybe the technical, but because what you were talking about, what you're trying to value in your team in terms of intrinsic motivation, autonomy, have you noticed that they have gone through a particular type of education, or do they come from all over? Or as a little bit of a background, I'm into Montessori education, and it really resonated with me when you described that, because it's exactly what the Montessori education is trying to foster in the child. So it's just, a question. Thank you.
Yeah, what an interesting question. Thank you. I I think the kind of people that we attract, of course, like it kind of changes a bit over time. It kind of evolves with the company. What we've always attracted were parents, people who, you know, either once you have a child, you start looking differently at, you know, at the future, most of all. So a lot of people don't want to go back to their old jobs after they've had their children, but instead want to do something that kind of feels meaningful. So a lot of, and also since we offer a lot of flexibility and freedom, it's easier, you know, to have a family and still like have a career. And that's why we attract a lot of young families, young parents. And their backgrounds are quite mixed, I would say, but it's also, I don't think I have the best overview because I hardly ever look at a CV, I have to say. I can also absolutely, I read through it and 3 minutes later I've forgotten everything that was in it. So it's more, you know, the kind of letter that we get, the motivation of the person to work with us, that kind of resonates, and, you know, how they see how they can contribute. I think those are, for me, those are the important questions. But still, I mean, there's, I don't know how you say that in English, like there's a certain way of bringing up your children that is very much focused on their needs. So there's a big community around that, like how do you, you know, bring up a small child, what are their needs, how can you respond to these needs? So a lot of that core community that you know, Wildling attracted came from that also core community of parenting. So I think it has something to do with mindfulness, with, you know, like a way of treating yourself and others, that probably is also some wavelengths that we have in the company. And that education, I mean, education is a whole new topic, and it's like, I've been so frustrated with the education of our own children, and we've actually swapped schools now because that system of, you know, performance and grades and, you know, seeing like this fraction of what that person can offer you is just terrible. So yeah, absolutely agree. I had a Montessori teacher when I was in primary school, and I loved him and I loved the way he taught us, and that was really such a great start into learning. And yeah, I'm happy not too many people ruined it afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess what's interesting, and maybe what I wanted to hear in a way, is that, and which is something I'm convinced, and I think the world today wants, it's that it's not really about what you've studied and the technicalities, you know, it's about these values, and it's about, and I think the world also has to change its view on like diplomas and certificates and all of that. It's about a way of being rather than what you have on your CV. So yeah, I think that's quite interesting. Thank you so much.
Agree. Totally agree.
Thanks, Amelie. Cool. I think, Steph, I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much, Anna, for your time. I will definitely contact you with regards to those workshops that you offer. I think it's very valuable for the community in terms of how you're measuring and putting things in place. If you guys are on Instagram or out there, please follow Wildling. They are incredible. I love the way that they bring your basically your brand essence through all of your communication is also exceptional. And the things that you're doing on the side. Stefan, I don't know if you have anything to say.
No, thank you very, very much, Anna. I think that's very insightful. And there's obviously so much more that we didn't speak about, but thank you for all the seeds that you've sown. And I think there's a lot that we can take and see what we can grow from it. I think the challenge to all of us is when one hears these stories is to say, where am I working? What do I keep myself busy with? And how do I change what we are doing? And how do I just lift the vision of the business that I'm involved in and really understand the impact that it has in the long run and build a stronger business that will last for many years. So thank you, Anna. It's been a privilege to meet you, and we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you all so much. It was really great questions and a great round here. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Lovely. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. I will send the recording once it's edited, cleaned up a bit. And yeah, I hope we can carry on these conversations and we can really put purpose into practice and take action.